Hi everyone, welcome back to the Sacred Spaces series. Back with me again, Mary, as your host. In today's episode, we travel to the Italian region of Umbria to visit one of the holiest sites in the Catholic world. Our destination is the magnificent Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi, built above the tomb of the saint. Join us as we uncover the history, art, and spiritual significance of this sacred place. The Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi is the mother church of the Roman Catholic Order of Friars Minor Conventual in Assisi, a town in the Umbria region in central Italy where St. Francis was born and died. It is a papal minor basilica and one of the most important places of Christian pilgrimage in Italy. With its accompanying Friary Sacro Convento, the basilica is a distinctive landmark to those approaching Assisi. It has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 2000. The basilica, which was begun in 1228, built into the side of a hill and comprises two churches known as the Upper Church and the Lower Church, and a crypt, where the remains of the saint are interred. The interior of the Upper Church is an important early example of the Gothic style in Italy. The upper and lower churches are decorated with frescoes by numerous late medieval painters from the Roman and Tuscan schools, and include works by Cimabue, Giotto, Simone Martini, Pietro Lorenzetti, and possibly Pietro Cavallin. The range and quality of the works give the basilica a unique importance in demonstrating the outstanding development of Italian art of this period, especially if compared with the rest of Christian Europe. The Franciscan Friary Sacro Convento and the Lower and Upper Basilicas, or in Italian, Basilica Inferiore e Superiore of Francis of Assisi, were begun in honor of this local saint. Immediately after his canonization in 1228, Simone di Pucciarello donated the land for the church, a hill at the west side of Assisi, known as Hill of Hell, or in Italian Colle d'Inferno, where previously criminals were put to death. Today, this hill is called Hill of Paradise. On the 16th of July, 1228, Francis was canonized by Pope Gregory IX in Assisi, and he laid the foundation stone of the new church the following day, although construction may already have been begun. The construction having been begun at his order, the Pope declared the church to be the property of the papacy. The church was designed by Maestro Jacopo Tedesco, who was in those days the most famous architect. The construction was supervised by Brother Elias of Cortona, one of the first followers of St. Francis and the former Vicar General of the Order under St. Francis. The Lower Basilica was finished in 1230. On Pentecost, the 25th of May, 1230, the remains of St. Francis were brought in a solemn procession to the Lower Basilica from its temporary burial place in the Church of San Giorgio, or St. George, now the Basilica of St. Clare of Assisi. The burial place was concealed for fear that St. Francis's remains might be stolen and dispersed. The construction of the Upper Basilica was begun after 1239 and was completed in 1253. Both churches were consecrated by Pope Innocent IV in 1253. Pope Nicholas IV, a former Minister General of the Order of Franciscans, raised the church to the status of papal church in 1288. The Piazza del Loggia, the square leading to the church, is surrounded by colonnades constructed in 1474. They housed the numerous pilgrims flocking to this church. In 1818, the remains of St. Francis were rediscovered beneath the floor of the Lower Basilica. In the reign of Pope Pius VII, the crypt was built so that the faithful might visit the burial place of the saint. On the 27th of October, 1986 and January 2002, Pope John Paul II gathered in Assisi with more than 120 representatives of different religions and Christian denominations for a World Day of Prayer for Peace. The church was designed by Maestro Jacopo Tedesco on two levels, each of which is consecrated as a church. They are known as the Basilica Superiore, or the Upper Basilica, generally called the Upper Church, and the Basilica Inferiore, or the Lower Basilica, generally called the Lower Church. The Lower Church was structurally a large crypt supporting the upper one. In the 19th century, a lower crypt was constructed beneath the basilica. Architecturally, the exterior of the basilica appears united with the Friary of St. Francis, since the lofty arcades of the latter support and buttress the church in its apparently precarious position on the hillside. The architecture is a synthesis of the Romanesque and Gothic styles, and established many of the typical characteristics of Italian Gothic architecture. As originally built, both upper and lower churches had a simple cruciform plan with an aisle-less nave of 4 square bays, square crossing, a transept that projected by half a bay on each side, and an apse, the lower being semicircular and the upper polygonal. To the left of the church stands a freestanding bell tower of Romanesque design. The lower church was built entirely in the Romanesque style, having low semicircular ribbed cross vaults over the nave and barrel vaults over the transept arms. However, the space has been greatly extended with a number of lateral and transept chapels added between 1350 and 1400. The main entrance to the nave is through an ornate Gothic doorway built between 1280 and 1300, and later enclosed with a simple Renaissance-style porch of 1487 by Francesco di Bartolomeo da Pietrasanta. Set in the tympanum of the Gothic doorway is an ornate rose window which has been called the eye of the most beautiful church in the world. The upper church has a facade of whitewashed brick, divided into 2 horizontal zones of about equal height, and with a simple gable of height equal to the lower zones. There is a single large doorway in the Gothic style, divided by a column and with a rose window set in the tympanum above the 2 cusped arches. Above the door in the second zone is a large and ornate rose window in which most of the decorative details are Romanesque in style. Surrounding it are carved the symbols of the 4 evangelists, combining with the window to create a square composition. Above it in the gable is an ocular window. To the left of the facade and visible from both the forecourts of the upper church and the lower church is the Benediction Loggia in the Baroque style, which was built in 1754 when the church was raised to the status of basilica. Internally, the upper church maintains Brother Elias' original simple eyeless cruciform plan. Like the lower church, there is a nave of 4 bays with ribbed cross vaulting. Unlike that of the lower church, it is only the diagonal ribs which are of semicircular form. The transverse ribs are pointed in the Gothic manner, and thus rise to the full height of the wider diagonal ribs. Each group of ribs springs from a group of clustered columns. Externally, the columns and vault are supported by stout buttresses of semicircular plan. Unlike the lower church, the transepts also have ribbed vaulting. There are tall Gothic windows with geometric tracery in each bay of the nave and in the polygonal apse of the chancel. The windows of the apse are believed to have been created by German craftsmen active around Assisi at the end of the 13th century. The windows on the left-hand side of the nave were made by a French workshop in 1270, while those on the right-hand side are attributed to the workshop of Maestro di San Francesco. These stained glass windows are among the best examples of 13th century Italian glasswork. As is characteristic of Italian church architecture, the main decorative feature and the main medium used for conveying the church's message is fresco, rather than stained glass. The earliest frescoes are some of those in the lower church. The work proceeded with a number of different projects and appears to have involved numerous artists, some of whom are as renowned as Cimabue and Giotto, but many of whom are no longer known by name. Halfway down the nave, one can descend into the crypt via a double stairway. This burial place of St. Francis was found in 1818. His remains had been hidden by Brother Elias to prevent the spread of his relics in medieval Europe. A story told by John M. Sweeney in The Enthusiast. By order of Pope Pius VII, a crypt was built under the Lower Basilica. It was designed by Pasquale Belli with precious marble in neoclassical style. But it was redesigned in bare stone in neo-Romanesque style by Ugo Tarchi between 1925 and 1932. The ancient stone coffin with iron ties is enshrined in an open space above the altar. In 1934, his most faithful brothers were entombed in the corners of the wall around the altar: Brother Rufino, Brother Angelo, Brother Maceo, and Brother Leo. At the entrance of the crypt, an urn with the remains of Jacopa de Sattesoli was added to the crypt. This woman of Roman nobility, affectionately referred to as Brother Jacoba, was the most faithful friend and benefactress of St. Francis. She was at his side in the Porzuincula at the hour of his death. Next to the basilica stands the Sacro Convento Friary with its imposing walls with 53 Romanesque arches and powerful buttresses supporting the whole complex. It towers over the valley below, giving the impression of a fortress. It was built with pink and white stone from Mount Cimabue. It was already inhabited by the friars in 1230, but construction took a long time, with, as a result, different styles intermingling, Romanesque with Gothic style. A major part was built under the reign of Pope Sixtus IV, a Franciscan. Between 1474 and 1476, the friary now houses a vast library with medieval codices and incunables, a museum with works of art donated by pilgrims through the centuries, and also the 57 works of art mainly of Florentine and Sienese schools of the Perkins collection. The belfry in Romanesque style was finished in 1239. The Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi is more than just a beautiful example of medieval architecture and art. It is a place of pilgrimage and prayer for Catholics from all over the world. For many, a visit to the tomb of St. Francis is a deeply moving experience. And the frescoes serve as a reminder of the power of faith and the importance of living a life of service to others. Whether you are an art lover, a history buff, or simply someone seeking a peaceful and reflective atmosphere, the Basilica of St. Francis of Assisi is definitely worth a visit. As you wander through the basilica, take time to appreciate the beauty of its architecture and art. And let the story of St. Francis inspire you to live a life of humility, peace, and care for creation. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Sacred Spaces. Till next time, may the peace of Christ be with you.